progress.
All right, we're up to the Mishnah, Daf Samach Vav Amud Aleph. A lot of these concepts we've had already. We'll run through it fairly quickly. The Mishnah said, Poischem b'yom tovim b'Shabbos, that we've had this before. This is going back to the sugya of neder shehuter miksasei huter kulei, which means that if you have a neder that's partially becomes nullified, you partially is nullified, the entire thing is nullified. So what happened was, a person made a neder that he's not going to, let's say, drink wine the whole year. So you can give a Pesach for Shabbos and Yom Tov, because you tell the guy, had you known Shabbos and Yom Tov you should drink wine, would you have made the neder? So he says no. So the neder, you already had a Pesach for partial of the neder. So fine. So you're matter a seventh of the neder, because every Shabbos you could drink wine. So says the Mishnah, originally they would say that when you're matter a neder partially, then only the part that you're matter is mutter, but the neder still stands. So if, let's say in this case, you're matter in the neder for Shabbos and Yom Tov, so originally they felt that means that Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you're not allowed to drink wine, Shabbos you are. Until Rav Akiva Valimid, he taught neder shehuter miksasei huter kulei. Rav Akiva taught that's not the halacha. Once a neder is partially nullified, the entire neder falls apart. Keitzad, what's an example of this, of a neder shehuter miksasei huter kulei? So Amar Kainam. Correct, an additional one. No, because we're going to clarify there are certain scenarios where it's not like that. So, this was the sugya that we had earlier, that a person says there's a group of people and he says, that entire group is usher to me. Then he realizes that one of them is his brother. So, huter echad mehen, huter kulan. So once one is mutter, the entire group is mutter. But that's only because he said kulchem. So he made it all one all or nothing, basically. But she'eni nena lezeh ulezeh. But let's say instead there's 5 people, and instead of saying kulchem, he said you're usher to me, you're usher to me, you're usher to me, you're usher to me, you're usher to me. So and one of them it turns out to be his father. So he individualized each one. So then the halach is like this: huter harishain. The halach is that we look at those nedarim as like a chain. That the ikar neder is on the first person, and then you're saying same as second, same as third, same as fourth, same as fifth. So the halacha is, if you're mater one, does the neder fall apart? It depends. So huter harishain, huter kulan. If the first one is nullified, if the first one's the father, then the entire neder is nullified, because each one is an extension of the first. If the first is gone, all of them are gone. Huter achrain, but if the last one is nullified, then achrain muter v'kulan esurin. Then only the last one is muter and not the rest, because the first 4 are independent. We look at them as, because you individualize each one, they're all considered, it's one neder, but it's extension of the first. So if the first one extends, the rest stand. If the first one doesn't, the rest don't. Now, the Mishnah then says another chiddush, Shani neder lezeh karbon ulezeh karbon. Let's say you have 5 people, and instead of saying zeh aser, you say zeh karbon, use the lashon of carbon by each one. Then the halacha is tzrichem pesach halecha ve'echad. Once you use the lashon of carbon by each one, it's considered a separate neder. So the concept that neder shehuter miksasei huter kulei means that if you have a neder that's partially nullified, the entire thing is nullified. That's only true if it's one neder. But when you say lezeh karbon, then it's 3 different nedarim. So the one that fell apart falls apart, but the other 2 are completely standing because they're completely separate nedarim. It's not that it's one neder contingent; it's completely separate parshas, legamri. Okay. Pasach chalecha ve'echad. Koinim yayin shani toyim. If a person says that a wine that it's going to be a little bit. It's okay. Kainam yayin shani toyim. If a person makes a neder that he's not going to drink wine because, and he clarifies shahayayin ra l'meim, because he says that the wine is bad for his stomach. So then the halacha is amrulai. So fine. So he says he makes a neder that he says the wine is bad for him, so I'm not going to drink wine. So amrulai, they say to him, haloi hamiyushin yafalin ma'ayim. The bad old wine is good for the stomach. You said wine is bad for the stomach. There are certain types of wine. Older wine, aged wine, is good for the stomach. So the halacha is huter b'miyushan v'lo mishiyan huter el v'chol yain. Once your mater neder, or in this case, you probably don't have to have teres darmin, so we're with toast. Once partial neder falls through aged wine, then all wine is allowed. Now, by the way, Gemara is just going to point out, he said that wine is bad, and they said that aged wine is good. It doesn't have to be that aged wine is good for you. The truth is, as long as aged wine is not bad, that would be the same halacha, but it's an added chiddush that the Gemara is just telling you, agav, parenthetically, aged wine happens to be good for the stomach. Similarly, koinim betzel shani toyim, betzel rad lelev, if the person says, I'm not going to eat onions because they're bad for the heart, and amrli they said, haloy hakufri, kufri is a type of onion, yafal lev, it's good for the heart. So huta bekufri. So then that's automatically nullified for the kufri type of species because it was a tos. But and now that it's mutter neder shehuta miksasa huta kule. Once it's mutter for one onion, it's mutter for all onions. And ma'isa haya ve'etir Rav Meir b'chol b'tzal. And we had a ma'isa like this that Rav Meir, in this exact scenario, Rav Meir allowed the person to eat all types of onions. Okay, so the Gemara said in the Mishnah had said that if you say lezek carbon, just by saying the word carbon separately makes it separate Nedarim. So the Gemara wants to know, Mantana, who is the author of that Mishnah? That again, if you would, listen, if you were to, there are five people for you to say, I swear I'm not going to eat by you, carbon. And I say, I swear I'm not going to pay you, carbon. Then obviously it's different Nedarim. Over here you said, I'm not going to eat lezek carbon. So you just added the word carbon. Automatically saying the word carbon separates it into different Nedarim. Who is the author of that? So the Gemara says, Amar Rava, Rav Shimon he. It follows Rav Shimon, and if you look at Rashi, what is this referring to? Rashi says on the right side, Rav Shimon he, Ditnan b'Mesechah Shavuos. It says in Mesechah Shavuos, Hayechamisha toivenoise. You have five people. Right? If you left an object by me for me to watch, and then you want it back, and I say, I don't know what you're talking about, and I swear, and if I'm proven to be a liar, not only do I have to bring a carbon, I have to return the object plus a fifth. It's a penalty. It's called Shuas Hapikadin. So the case is you have five people all sitting in front of me, and they're all like, that's my object. No, I was the one who left it. So they're all claiming it, and I just swear falsely to all five. I lie to all of them. I don't know what you're talking about. So I lied to five individual people in one action. So Rav Shimon is, Rav Shimon says, saying that to all five people is not enough. To be chayav for each one, you have to say a lashon of shvuah by each one. So the same way Rav Shimon is the one who holds that you have to say a lashon of shvuah by each one to separate it, he's also the one that says that carbon is a separation regarding these halachas as well. It's a bit of a chiddush because you could have seen that they're separate sugyas, but the Gemara is equating the two, that if you require a separate lashon of shvuah to separate the shvuahs, so too over here by saying carbon is a separation regarding the amount of Nedarim it is. Okay, just to get to the Mishnah, I spoke this out when I read the Mishnah, we'll read it inside, that the person made an oath that he's not going to eat onions because they're bad for your heart. And then the Mishnah said, yeah, but kufris are good for your heart. The truth is, the same exact halacha would apply if kufris were just not bad, right? I said I'm not going to eat onions because they're bad for me. They say, but the kufris are good for you. The same exact halacha would be true if the kufris were just not bad for me. It doesn't have to be that it's good for you. Like when you read the Mishnah, it sounds like it has to be that the item is not only is it not bad, it's actually good for your heart. But that's not true. So the Gemara says, "Typically de ein ra." Why does it have to be that it's good for you? It just has to be not bad. So the Gemara says, "Amar Rav, avoid yafikatani." It's teaching you a side point that you should know these things are good for you. Similarly, by the onions, typically de ein ra, Rav, avoid yafikatani. Meaning, yes, it would be the exact same halacha if the onions were just not bad, but they happen to be good for you. So you walk away with a little knowledge that the kufri onions are good for you. Okay, new Mishnah. If a person, a form of Pesach would be to explain to the person that your own covet is being affected and your children's covet are being affected. Meaning, what's the case? The case is that a person made a neder which is forcing his wife to divorce him. Let's say he assered relations with his wife, which is forcing a divorce. So, we said to him, would you realize that if you went, when he made the neder, which is causing the divorce to happen, did you realize that people are talking about you or will talk about you, and they're going to say, Kachi veste shel ploni, megarish es nashav. Back then, divorce was very taboo, and it's unfortunately it's becoming more common. But so you say to the guy, people are saying about you, like he just divorces people, like that's the type of husband he is. He just divorces his wife. People are saying that about you, or al b'nei secha, or they're saying about your kids. You oimrim banes gerusha saying. something must have been bad in the house for getting divorced. I mean, it's the kid's fault. Meaning, people are talking, it's affecting your reputation. Ma rasa iman shalelu is garish. Why is their mom getting divorced? I mean, what's going on? If the person says, had I known this, I wouldn't have made the neder, he's a mutter. So that's a legitimate Pesach. Okay. Now, this Mishnah we had already, but we had it yesterday, but I'll read it again. If a person makes a neder that he's not going to marry a certain woman because she is ugly, and it is not true, she is attractive, meaning, so it's not that she became attractive, because that we're going to see. That pashtus, if you read the Mishnah, it would seem that if she is ugly, but then she goes for surgery and she becomes attractive, that would actually be not grounds for Hataras Nedarim, because that's noilid, because why would I think that someone would change? That would actually not be a good grounds for Hataras Nedarim. The case is that it's a false neder. Or Shchayra, I think she is dark complexion, very Levana. I think she's Sephardi, but she's Ashkenazi. Or Kitzara, I think she's short, very Arucha, but she's tall. Muterba, these are the Nedarim fall apart. But Loi Mibnei Shikura v'Nasis, no. It's not because she changed, because change would actually not be acceptable. Shchayra v'Nas Levana, Kitzara v'Nas Arucha, Elisha Neder Tos. It's a case where the neder is tos. Okay, meaning, but you see from here is that if a person makes a neder about a woman, she's unattractive, and then she becomes attractive, like she actually changes, that would not be a good grounds to remove the neder, and the neder is still intact. Maisa, the truth is, there's a story. Now, this story seems to contradict what I just said, and the Gemara is going to address this. Maisa be'echad shenodar mibasa choisei haniya. There was a person that was being pressured to marry his niece. He didn't want to. He made a neder. She's not going to marry her because she is unattractive. Ve'echnisa lebeis Rabbi Shmuel. It's a very beautiful concept. They brought her to Rabbi Shmuel, V'yifa, and Rabbi Shmuel helped her, paid for the surgery to make her more attractive. The Gemara is going to say what happened was she had missing a tooth, and he fixed the tooth. He paid for the tooth to fix her teeth. So a change happened. So Amrle Rabbi Shmuel b'nei mizumi darta. So Rabbi Shmuel goes to the person who made the neder and he said, "You didn't want to marry this girl? Why? What's wrong with her?" So Amrle lav. He says, "No, that's good. We're good now." The hitira. So he was matir neder, which is the exact opposite of what I just said, because over here it's not that it was a neder b'tos. It was a legitimate neder. She just had surgery, and the Gemara is going to address this. Rabbi Shmuel, ba'oisei shah, v'etir Rabbi Shmuel, ba'oisei shah b'achar Rabbi Shmuel, at that moment Rabbi Shmuel used to cry, v'amar b'nois Yisrael no yisein, he said, the Jewish people are beautiful. Elashanius min avlasan, it's just the poverty that affected him, meaning that, and obviously on a deeper level, he was talking about Klal Yisrael as a whole. The Klal Yisrael as a whole, spiritually also, we're good people. It's just we're affected by circumstance. This girl is an attractive girl, but she became poor, she lost her teeth. But deep down, she started off beautiful, she got beautiful as well, so that's what Klal Yisrael. Shmuel, and when Rabbi Shmuel died, the Jewish women, because he was such a defender for the beauty of Klal Yisrael, they said a lamentation, that let the Jewish people, let the Jewish girls cry over Rabbi Shmuel. And a similar lashon was said by Shaul HaMelech, B'nai Yisrael al Shaul b'china, that the Jewish people, the B'nai Yisrael will sing kina on Shaul. So it's a beautiful concept. So let's start with the Gemara. Now, I said before when you do the Mishnah that it's only a legitimate grounds for Hataras Nedarim if she was attractive at the time of the neder, because it's a neder b'tos. But if she's unattractive and then she goes through surgery, that's not grounds for Hataras Nedarim, because that's noilid, that you didn't see that coming. Then the Mishnah brings an example of how Rabbi Shmuel was not matir neder after performing surgery. So he disagrees, but usually you bring a halacha and then you bring a maisa. Usually the maisa is to back up the halacha, not to disagree. It's fair if he's disagreeing, but that's not the flow. So the Gemara says maisa lister. So the Gemara answers what Brad says. Chasuri mechser. The truth is Rabbi Shmuel disagrees, and you got to add the words in. Chasuri mechser v'achitani. This is how you're supposed to read the Mishnah. Rabbi Shmuel oimer afilu kuura v'nasa no shchayr v'nasa lavana katsar v'nasa arucha. Rabbi Shmuel disagrees. He feels that this form of noilid, I guess he's mater neder by noilid, and he says even if she is unattractive and then she becomes attractive, that's also grounds to do Hataras Nedarim. And Maisa, and I have a Maisa that backs it up, his disagreeing of the Tanakama. Okay, go to the next page. Tana, Shein Taitava Haisala, she was missing a tooth, and Rabbi Shmuel made a Shein Taitava, a golden tooth. That was what he did. So by the way, he did offer
rationale for why. He did say it was because of the circumstances. It wasn't because he wasn't born that way.
True, but
he came that way.
So you're saying that maybe it's not that much of a noilid.
Right.
Okay, it's interesting, but still the fact that she would the fact that she would change is the noilid. Meaning, I understand why she became ugly, but the fact that she would change her appearance, I think, is noilid, because she couldn't afford it. Usually, if you're so poor that you lose your teeth, you're not going to be able to all of a sudden have corrective surgery. So Rabbi Shmuel gave her a golden tooth. Shein shel zav mishaloi. He paid for it out of his own pocket. So by the way, when I read this Gemara, I was just like, okay, I guess beauty was different back then. So I saw Rav Yaakov Emden, he tainas that it must have been that her entire mouth was golden teeth, and this fit in, so that it's not, because a golden tooth amongst non-golden teeth is actually not attractive ever. It was never attractive. So he said the entire mouth is gold. Or he says when it says gold, it doesn't mean actual gold. It means he paid for it. It was like done. It was a prosthetic that was done like gold level surgery. It wasn't actually gold. It was just means that he paid a lot of gold to have corrective surgery done. That's what Rabbi Yaakov says. Kishacha Rabbi Shmuel, and Rabbi Shmuel died. Pasach alehu safdana. There was a certain person who was paid to do eulogies, and he said as following: B'nai Yisrael Rabbi Shmuel b'china. The daughters of Israel should weep over Rabbi Shmuel hamalbishan, because he clothed you, meaning he paid for this out of his own pocket to help her get married. So the Gemara says some maisim. Let's just fear to the end of the daf. We'll just do some stories. So the Gemara says like this: this following stories are all describing cases where a person made a neder against his wife, and the only way to be mater neder was for her to do something not only embarrassing, but degrading to Rabbanim. And the question is, how should the Rabbanim respond? Because it's sort of like, you sort of see both sides. Like on the one hand, it's, at this point, the neder's already made. It's shalom bayis, and who cares about your covet if you could save a marriage? On the other hand, it's not ba'kavadik for Torah, but on the other hand, it's already done. Like, you sort of see these both options. So the Gemara says, there's a man who said to his wife, you're cut off to me, unless you give your food. You have to make a dinner, and you have to feed Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Shimon. That's degrading to go into... You have to make cholent, and you have to feed it to Rechaim Kanievsky. Like, okay, so I'm going to show up to his house with some cholent and say, please eat my cholent. It's embarrassing for him. It's embarrassing for me. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda tasted the food, even though it's ridiculous to offer the Gedolei Yisrael. By the way, she probably also wasn't a good cook. That's probably how the argument developed. But Rabbi Yehuda ate from the food. Amar Kavachomer, it's degrading. He said the following Kavachomer: Umalas Shalom ben Ishla Ishtay Amar Tayra Shmi Shenichta B'Kedushi Machla Mai Marim B'Safik V'Ani Alachas Kama V'Kama. Right, every saita, right, to clarify whether she's innocent or guilty. So potentially to save a marriage, we take Hashem's name and we erase it in the water. So if you're going to erase Hashem's name for Shalom Bayis, so you'll embarrass me. Again, also the neder's already done. It's not like they're contemplating. It's already happened. The only option is. You either help him or not. Rav Shimon disagreed. Rav Shimon loy time. Rav Shimon refused. He felt that for Kavod Torah, I'm not playing your game. He refused. And Amar, he said, Yemusu kol b'nei almana. Let him die and let his children die. V'al yaz Shimon kaimeh. Shimon's not moving. Meaning, shalom bayis. Well, that's their problem. I represent Torah. I'm not playing this game. Also, I saw that the Marshal says they also could do Atar Sedarim. So Rav Shimon said, why am I entertaining this when there's an option? I'm not playing this game. And also Rishim said, besides for the bizayin of Kavod Torah, it makes Nedarim much more lax in people's eyes that I'm entertaining this neder. I'm not doing that. I'm not playing this game. So that was that story. The Gemara says, I think it's three more ma'asim. There's a man who said to his wife, you're also to me unless you spit on Rishim Gamliel. Great. So also she came, Virokak al-Bushe, she spat on his clothing. It kind of sounds like he was probably allowed it. There's a very famous story that Rav Meir allowed someone to spit on his eye. There was a similar Maisa, and Rav Meir allowed her to spit on his eye. And he said to her that I have an illness, and the only way it's better is if you spit on my eye, in order to allow her to do it without him being embarrassed. So Rav Shimon Gamliel, I probably let her, and she spat on his clothing. The question is, when you make a neder that the neder is only removed if you spit on the guy, do you mean clothing or skin? Clothing is not as degrading as skin. Spitting on someone's face is way worse than spitting on their sleeve. So he made a neder and the neder is only removed if she spits on Rav Shimon Gamliel. she spat on him, but on his clothing. So the Gemara wants to know, does that work? But isn't the whole point to embarrass Rosh Hashanah? And that only happens if you spit on the skin, not on the clothing. Spitting on Rosh Hashanah's clothing is pretty embarrassing. It's embarrassing for him. It's embarrassing for her. Like, yes, you're right. Spitting on someone's face is way worse. But when you're spitting on the Gadol B'Yisrael, that's not great. It's not what you want. The next two stories, the next two stories are funny. They're cute. There's a certain man who said to his wife, he didn't find his wife attractive, as you'll see why. I'm sure there's deeper explanation. I'm sure it's probably emotional for Klal Yisrael, but let's just go with the Pashut Shot. There was a certain person who didn't find his wife attractive, and he says, Kaidim shi'atan honestly. He said, you're asa to me, unless Rabbi Shmuel bar Rav Yossi can find something about you that's attractive, I'm out. Can find something that's about you that's beautiful. Now, obviously, first of all, it's not appropriate on many levels. So Rabbi Shmuel bar Rav Yossi is forced with the situation. He's got to find something attractive about this woman, but he's not going to start examining her. So they tell this to Rabbi Shmuel bar Rav Yossi. So Rabbi Shmuel bar Rav Yossi, without even seeing her, this is what he asks. He says, Amar Lahem, he said to them, notice, not to the woman. He's not looking at a woman to see what's attractive. That's not what he's going to do. So he says to her, he's got to find something attractive. So he says, Shema Roshana, does she have a nice shaped head? So Amar Le Sagalgal, it's round like a ball. Okay. Shema Sirena, does she have nice hair? So Doim Lanitze Pishtan, it's like combed flax. Shema Ineha Nois, does she have nice eyes? Truth is saying they're round. Okay. Shema is now nice. What about her ears? What the shape of her ears? So Kafula is saying they're double the size of normal people. Shema Chaytmana, what about her nose? Klumhu, it's actually squeezed closed. She has a medical condition that it's actually covered up with skin.
Like from the Goonies.
Yeah. Nice. What about her lips? It's obviously they're very thick. Shema Tzavarana, what about her neck? Shakudu, it's very short. Shema Krisana, I don't know, the torso, it's Tzava, it's bloated. Shema Raglanois, what about her feet? Ruchovis Kishalavza, they're white as like a goose. Okay. Shema Shmono, what about a nice name? She's got a nice name. Rachel, Leah. Women's names are very beautiful. What about a nice name? Her name is Lachluchis. Lachluchis means a stain. Her name is a stain. So Amar Lahan, Yafen Karas Lachluchis, Shimuchlachis B'mamin. He says, that's beautiful. That name fits her beautifully. That's a great name for her. And that he was Mataneda. Right? He was supposed to sign something amazing about her. Her name fits her perfectly. She is stained.
It's one and the same. It represents her essence.
Yeah, her name represents her essence beautifully. So that was how he was Mataneda. So
he's always saying the good in the...
Rabbi Shmuel Rav Yossi. He's fine. Listen, the good is that her name matches her perfectly. She is stained perfect. Yeah. That's interesting. Last Maisa. Now, this Maisa, when I read it the first time, I thought it was funny, but the Marsha kind of ruined it by explaining what was happening. I like the first version of my head. I thought it was just funny. Yeah. I'm going to tell you the story. I'll tell you the Pashut Shot. You'll see why you think it's naturally funny, and then you'll see why the Marsha changes it. Hahu bar Bavel, the Salak Lar de Yisrael, Nasavitasa. There was a Babylonian who went to Eretz Yisrael and got married. So Amrla Bashili Trey Tilfi, he says, can you cook me a couple of lentils? The lentils are tiny. So she took what he said literally, Bashila Trey Tilfi. She cooked 2 lentils. He asked for some lentils. Some is 2. She made 2 lentils.
She showed him.
Yeah, so I thought this entire Gemara, she's constantly doing literally what he says. And I think it's kind of funny because she's just trying to anger him. I'll read the Gemara and I'll tell you what the Marsha says is going on. So, Bashila Trei she cooked literally 2 lentils, which by the way is a hard thing to do. Tiny little thimble of boiling water. So, Rochas Allah, he gets angry with her. So, Machar Amrla Kashila Grira, he says, so cook me a large amount of lentils. So, Bashila Grila, she cooked like a bathtub's worth of lentils. Okay. Amrla, Zili Islay Tree Butsini, can you get me 2 melons, please, from the store? Butsini are melons. So Azlav Islay Trey Shargi, she brought 2 lamps, because lamps are also called Butsine. So she got 2 lamps for him. Amrla, so he was angry because he thinks she's messing with him. So Zil Tavri Yasaina Resha de Baba, go break those lamps on the Baba. Baba is the doorway. So, Havi Yosef Baba Ben Buta, Baba. So she goes to the doorway, and the great Rav, Baba Ben Buta. Baba is the doorway. Baba Ben Buta is there. She says, okay, Doin Dina, he's doing court case. So her husband said, break the lamps on the head of Bubba. So obviously he meant the doorway, but she Azla v'tavra yasayin aresha. She breaks the lamps on his head. So Amar La my hadin das Baba Muda says, what are you doing? Why are you breaking lamps over my head? Amar Le kach tzivani baili. She said, I'm just listening to my husband. My husband said, break the lamps on Baba. So Amar, he was impressed. He said, Atar tzizah roisa balecha. That's how much you're trying to make him happy. You're so devoted to him. Hamakim yoitzim choshnei banim k'Baba Muda. You should have children as great as Baba Muda. Hadron l'chrav Eliezer. So I read the Gemara. I just thought she was trying to mess with her husband. Says the Maharsha, if you read the first line of the story, is that it was a Babylonian who moved to Eretz Yisrael. She legitimately was trying to do everything he said, but there was a language barrier. Everything he was saying, she just didn't understand, and she was a committed wife trying desperately to make him happy. It was just comedically there was a miscommunication. She thought he literally meant 2 lentils. That's the end of that story. All right, we'll stop here.
The story is that the Rabbi